But we actually believe that there is a lot that people can do, that brands can mean to people today. The world looks closed, but it isn't really. Behind a lot of the behind all of these windows, in all of these houses, a lot of life, as we've always known it, is still happening. The context is different, but life is still happening. So indeed, these messages of empathy have been very much welcomed. We know that also when following social media buzz and so on. But we think now is time to start focusing on doing what brands have always done, which is providing solutions, being relevant, be it in this new low-touch context. I'm sure you've heard this one before in the past few weeks, but it is true that every crisis also brings an opportunity. JFK knew it, and this has been proven many times since then. Just in case you haven't heard, according to the quote, the Chinese translation of crisis, YG, uses two characters, one for danger and one for opportunity. Now, by the way, this is not actually true. YG actually means danger at the point of juncture. But it doesn't matter, because even in amongst native Chinese speakers, people have picked up this alternative meaning. So even if these are stressful times, there are a lot of opportunities out there. Obviously, we've been in this situation for some time, but let's first kind of map out a little bit where exactly we are today. Obviously, the initial phases of disbelief and then getting sort of adjusted to this situation have been pretty tough for people to deal with. But we've observed all around the world the resilience that humanity have. We have faced many challenges in the past, so we will be able to deal with this new reality as well. And fairly soon, we can expect that life will will start to pick up again, let's say. We will be adjusted to this new reality. Certainly in Denmark, as the first anticipation of life opening up again is looming. Now, if we look a little bit ahead, the reality is not in a few weeks, not even in a couple of months, we're not going to go back to life as we knew it. Without a vaccine or scalable treatment, we're just going to have to live with this virus. So this will become our new normal, this let's say low touch reality. I don't know if you've heard about what I think is the single best article that I've read on the impact of the coronavirus and sort of what the next couple of years maybe will look like. It's a great piece of writing called "The Hammer and the Dance," and in the meantime, it's had like more than 10 million views and so on and so on. So basically, the summary is that the lockdown that we are currently in is the hammer phase. We have to do whatever it takes to bring the number of infections down as much as possible. Harsh measures, not to eradicate the virus, it's too late for that, but this hammer phase helps us to buy time, to get organized, to increase the capacity in our healthcare system, to explore how new technology can help to scale testing and so on and so on. Then, hopefully sooner rather than later, we'll come into a phase where we've at least controlled the situation. And then we'll move into the next phase, which is the dance. A period during which a lot of certainly the harshest social distancing measures will be reduced, but clearly there will still be a lot of measures that are needed in order to keep the number of infections relatively low. So in Belgium, where I'm based, for instance, yesterday the whole festival summer was cancelled. I know the Roskilde was cancelled already a few weeks ago. And so there will be more of these type of restrictions, but at least we'll be able to pick up a little bit more of the life that we knew before the lockdown, let's say. So this gives us a little bit of an idea of what this low touch new normal ahead of us will look like, a light version of the lockdown that we are in right now. So important for brands to respond to that, to engage with that new low touch context. But first, let's have a look in a little bit more detail how this is impacting people's behavior. All of us use habits or routines to navigate what are normally pretty stable environments. Typically, these routines have developed over a long period of time, and as we see what works for us, these routines have become more automatic, so we do them without having to deliberate, without having to think. It means we don't have to think too much about the toothpaste we use, the pasta we buy, the beer we use, and so on. As Obama pointed out, he always said the reason why I always wear the same suits, gray or blue, is that because this routine frees us up to concentrate on other things. That's kind of how a lot of routine usually works. Usually it takes years for our behavior to even gradually evolve. But today we are witnessing a massive behavior shift in just a matter of weeks, or sometimes even a matter of days. Like when was the last time you shook somebody's hand? So with COVID-19, with the coronavirus, in many ways, we can no longer depend on all these many of these automatic behaviors that we have developed over time, because they reflect a mastery of a past that no longer exists. Maybe we had a routine about which toothpaste we prefer, but when everybody's stockpiling and our brand is out of stock, it means suddenly we have to consider the merits of what is available, and then the degree to which it meets your needs. You need to start weighing your options, and that obviously takes quite a bit of energy. I don't need to, dwell too much on this slide. I think we're all experiencing this, but the impact on our daily life is huge. It has impact on the meal planning that we do, how we clean the household. Should we disinfect our laptops and our common spaces more? How do we keep up a little bit of an exercise routine? Should we think about taking nutritional supplements to boost our immune systems, and so on and so on? And then on entertainment as well, how do we spend our evenings? How do we socialize with friends? How do we keep ourselves busy? If you have kids, how do we keep them busy while we are attending webinars or in meetings? Clearly, all of this has a big impact. But there is a positive side. To me, I've observed a lot of really positive energy from this as well, which is inspiring a lot of new routines and rituals. We're forced to reinvent our lives. And the fact that we've been able to do this so quickly is a demonstration of that resilience that I was mentioning in the intro. So just a few examples. All over the world, we see a big increase in shopping local. From butchers to fruit and vegetables to flowers and fashion. There's a whole range of producers and suppliers that are delivering fresh, crafted goods directly to your doorstep. Even though that was not a habit, that was not a routine that we had before, or at least many of us didn't. Another interesting example is how we started to share media content. And in this case, we've actually started to move back to a routine which was long called over and out, the kind of shared viewing in front of the TV. Now we see that a lot of families are gathering together to watch whatever, to binge watch the latest series, or even if it is at a distance, you have an app like Netflix Party that allows us to watch the same content on different screens at the same time. And then people are obviously making much more use of all sorts of ways to connect virtually. Not just putting on the video option a lot more than what we used to do, but also enhancing the virtual experience. So one app that's been incredibly successful is an app called House Party. It was like relatively unknown until about a month ago, but now all of a sudden it's one of the most downloaded apps in the App Store in the United States and in many other countries across the world. Because, you know, why? Because again, it enhances the virtual conversation. You can play little games, play with backgrounds, all these sorts of things, and in a very intuitive way. That even my 6-year-old daughter intuitively gets, as well as my 76-year-old mother, so to speak. So there's so many new routines and rituals that are developing. I've heard about people streaming weddings and funerals, people starting to cut their own hair with hairdressers being closed, people taking work calls with our kids sitting, our cats sitting on our laps, we're ordering cocktails at home, doing virtual accounts, and so on. Clearly, this very dynamic environment is also inviting brands to rethink how they can be relevant. So as I mentioned, we see a certain hesitation amongst brands because they're seen as profiteering or because they're already cutting budgets in anticipation of the economic crisis ahead of us. There's a lot of evidence why continuing to advertise during times of crisis is actually a very, very smart investment in the future. We're not going to dwell on that too much, but let's talk about let's say 3 different ways in which brands can respond to the situation as we see it today. The first one is obvious by now. Brands can show empathy. In the first few weeks of this pandemic, where people were struggling with the uncertainty, trying to get their lives organized, obviously messages of empathy were very much welcomed. But if we're going to be in this situation for 1 or 2 years, this type of narrative will fade. The impact of that I think, has already faded mostly. Then, also something that a lot of brands and brand owners around the world have started to do is to start to envision the post-C-19 future. Hopefully, someday we will have beaten this virus. We will be able to leave all of this behind us. But since that's going to take quite a long time, there is a very, very important phase in between. These next 12 to 24 months, when everybody will be living in this new low-touch reality, not as harsh as the current lockdown, but very far away from the normal that we experienced before. And we believe it's very important for brands to understand what these new routines and rituals are, and then to become part of them, to connect with them, because in that way, brands can redefine how they're adding value to people's lives. I'm not going to focus on the last one yet. Start envisioning a post-C-19 future. There's a lot of articles already about how the world will be completely different and nothing will ever be the same again. And then other articles or thinking about things will eventually just go back to pretty much normal. I think, honestly, these are very interesting debates, but with this, that reality, that phase 3, still far ahead of us, I think it's more important to focus on a little bit the first phase and mainly the second phase for now. So just a few examples of brands showing empathy, and I'm sure you've seen quite a few of these. Brands can give comfort, that certainly, again, in the beginning was needed. For instance, when St. Patrick's Day, the 17th of March, was cancelled, a lot of people felt very upset with the cancellation of the St. Patrick's Day March, the parade. So they came out with a beautiful, a warm message to reassure people that Guinness is not going to go anywhere, and that someday in the future, all of us will be marching again. Or we've seen different kinds of comfort, like Hyundai saying that they can postpone down payments for their car. Then there's been quite a lot of messages from brands helping people pass time, build new routines, and so on. Bird's Eye, or Findus, as I believe they're called in the Nordics, is providing lots of life hacks, tips and tricks to entertain the kids at home. IKEA came out with this stay home catalog where they provide family boredom solutions. And then Chipotle, a chain of Mexican food restaurants in the US, organized the Chipotle Together, where they invite 3,000 people to a virtual hangout session on Zoom, where they interact with celebrities such as the presenter of The Bachelor in the US, and so on and so on. And then finally, the reinforcement of social messages is also something that we've seen, like McDonald's telling you to wash your hands, and then obviously a lot about staying apart. I don't know, I've stopped counting, but how many brands use their logo to symbolize the social distancing, like Coca-Cola in this example. This kind of message, again, they have been very important. They have been applauded on social media, but there is more that brands can do. Of course, still in that low-touch new normal that we'll be living in, you don't want to come across as opportunistic. But it doesn't mean that people cannot play an important role in people's lives during a time where this shifted context means that people are having to change their behavior in order to stay healthy. It's as simple as that. Obviously, we're making a lot of these decisions in fluid, unstable times. Consumers are in distress. But this makes consumers more likely to pay attention to brands that are willing to engage with us in the right way. So wise brand leaders who are willing to be actively present can emerge from this period with stronger brands and more, and kind of more commitment from their customer base. It's not about profiteering from the crisis, but about managing brands and doing business wisely, let's say. We also know that people expect this from brands. People are okay with this. Yes, companies have a social responsibility. A lot of people agree with that statement. But people are interested to hear how brands can help them navigate the crisis. People are interested to hear, they want to continue to hear what brands have to offer. So this fear of profiteering, we shouldn't be taking, it shouldn't immobilize us completely. There are things that we can do. We looked in the beginning, and I've mentioned, like in Denmark, we're getting closer to the anticipation of the lockdown ending. But here we're looking at some global data and the way that people perceive it themselves across, I think this is about 15 different countries. We see that most people are either in adjustment, reacting day by day, but already developing new routines, or acclimation, settling into the new routines and day-to-day reality. So people, as we've seen in the examples, people have already developed many of these new routines. But it doesn't mean, even when they say settled in, it doesn't mean that they cannot still be further optimized. We also know that there's a lot of frustration still out there. There's a lot of anxiety. People fear for their health. They fear for their financial security. People are still, or maybe even increasingly so, getting bored and impatient to get out. So that's certainly something to take into account. So I've been talking about routines and rituals for a while, but I think maybe now is a good time to take a little step back and to talk a little bit about what we know about routines and rituals, and even the difference between the two. Well, first, what we know is that routines are sort of a part of behavior that we generally perform with little thought. When routines become more strictly observed, it can become a ritual, and that's particularly the case when the routine starts to get infused with meaning. I think, for instance, about a lot of people that commute to work ritualistically on their way to the office. They will stop at the same coffee shop every day, let's say Starbucks, to have their same drink of choice as a, and this is kind of as a reward of the start of their day. So indeed, second aspect to rituals is that typically they fulfill a need, and then when there's enough repetition, they become easy to perform and replicate. A final element about rituals is that, particularly in stressful times, they are important because they allow us to create a little bit of a sense of normalcy. Like in Belgium, we've been in lockdown for about 5 weeks. And so working from home, I still try to walk to work every single morning, which is a little bit pointless in the sense that I start from A and go back to A, but at least I have like something that structures my day a little bit more, that creates a barrier between the personal life at home and the work life at home. And another thing is that unlike many others I've seen on video calls, I still dress in the same way as if I would go to the office. So I still wear a shirt to the office. You're not going to catch me in sweatpants in front of the camera. So let's get back to brands. In this context, brands can clearly play a very important role by starting to participate in these new routines and rituals. We basically see 4 potential ways in which brands can do this. First, brands can identify new, potentially durable routines that are not yet ritualized. When brands observe a certain type of behavior, they can start to infuse it with more meaning. Brands can also drive the internalization of enjoyable new habits that meet a need and are easy to perform by making it explicit which needs this new behavior is addressing. Then brands can also illustrate a sense of shared experience. When people are engaging in new behaviors, you often feel sort of self-consciously alone. I don't know if some of you have started to wear mouth masks, but that's a new thing, certainly in most of Europe. The first time that you do it, you're very self-conscious, but when you see other people are doing it, then you're much more likely to repeat it. And then finally, brands can deliver an aligned brand experience where the positioning and the delivery provide mutual reinforcement. Let's look at a couple of examples. One massive behavioral shift that we've seen is this further move to virtual. Obviously, this had already started, but the shift has been very much accelerated, let's say. So in Scotland, for instance, we observed that in the first week of the lockdown, in-home drinking almost doubled, and many people were sharing drinks over a screen. One brand that was particularly fast in picking up this new routine and infusing it with meaning was Brewdog. So Brewdog is a craft brewer. And what they did is, in response to seeing that people were drinking in front of a Zoom session, they opened up more than 100 different online bars. Then they enhanced these virtual bars with beer tastings, home brewing, pub quizzes, live music, comedy, and so on and so on. And while you're in that virtual pub, you can order drinks through the HopDrop app. So in that sense, they have reinvented the essence of the British pub culture in an online environment. And they spotted the new routine, but they gave it, they infused it with much more meaning, in that sense, creating much more of a ritual. Then we know that connecting with others through a screen can feel a little bit uncomfortable, but with more brands introducing this behavior, we do expect this to drive internalization. Dr. Oetker, for instance, a pizza brand, is currently airing a commercial at least in some European countries, with the message, not together, still very close, where two partners are enjoying a pizza over a virtual candlelight dinner. And as many, particularly young, new couples around the world, not yet living together, are being forced to stay apart, it's offering a way to still have a romantic meal together, which is obviously in that phase of a relationship a very important need. Jack Daniels is another example of internalization. They launched a campaign where they use everyday lockdown footage of what people are doing. Again, the resilience, the creativity that people are showing to make social distancing more social. You see everyday scenes like playing chess in front of your smartphone with a friend far away, high-fiving a screen, and obviously sharing a bit of a bourbon. Then with the payoff, cheers to making social distancing social. Bird's Eye, again, they've been quite active in this lockdown period. They give us also a good example of a shared experience. In a commercial they launched a couple of weeks ago in the UK, they show how the new reality of everyday life, like obviously the video calling with the grandparents, exercising with the whole family in front of the TV, the kids helping out in the kitchen, again, helping people get used to this situation. And then the final thing that brands can do is kind of delivering an aligned brand experience. Here we have seen some examples, but not too many yet. I think a great one was Nike. They started with almost like more of an empathy message of play inside, play for the world. But they've built on that, and they made a beautiful campaign in true Nike style, kind of talking to those playing in bedrooms, those like really taking their exercise seriously. We're not playing together, we're not playing for countries, we're not playing for giant crowds, but we're playing for 7.8 billion people. This is our chance to play for the world. This is completely in line with the brand essence that Nike has always used of challenging yourself, but of course reinterpreted within today's lockdown context. question that we hear a lot, obviously, when we see that much new behavior, is this likely to stick when we go back to normal? First challenge that we always give to that question is what is normal going to look like? After we've experienced this low-touch reality for 12 to 24 months, there's many things that will have evolved. But we can learn a little bit from behavioral science. When does behavior stick? Normally, in stable environments, the more traditional models of habit will emphasize kind of repetition and rewards. So if your new behavior is rewarding, if it meets your needs and your objectives, and if there's enough opportunity to repeat, it will stick. And some of this is interesting and can help us to understand what will happen. But because these are unusual times, we think that another dimension will be more important in predicting if behavior will stick. When behavior routine is infused with meaning, we think it's much more likely to stick around. Think, for instance, about all those Skyperos or Zoom drinks, whatever we call them. Once bar reopen, are we really going to continue ordering beers and having them at home in front of the camera? Probably not, despite how much repetition we have had and how much how rewarding they have been. Infuse them with meaning, then they will be more likely to stick. An example of that is comes from American Express. During the Great Recession from 2008, American Express started a beautiful initiative to support local businesses who were suffering a lot because the previous recession was also a time where the Amazons of this world really started to take off in a very big way. And what Amazon did was to create a new ritual called Small Business Saturday, which is somewhere at the end of November, shortly after Black Friday, encouraging people to, on that Saturday, go spend their money in a local shop, and then talk about it on social media with the hashtag, at the time, Small Business Saturday. It has evolved to Shop Small. People continue to perform this ritual long after the previous recession was left behind us, because it has so much meaning, because people, through the campaign, understood the importance of shopping local and how it benefits the local community. And that is why, even today, it's still a relevant ritual. And on the right-hand side, you can see Stay Home, Shop Small is still a campaign that they are running. So it's clear, we, as brands, should not just hold our breath and just sit this one out. We need to accept the new reality we are living in. We need to focus on understanding what these new routines and rituals are, and then we need to look for ways in which we can engage with them. Before we open up for questions, you can use, I think, the chat box, or let Anders moderate that. Let's leave you with a quote from Mark Ritson, who I think is a very inspiring thinker. The wheels of industry need to keep turning so workers are paid and families are fed. Those wheels are best greased by effective marketing. Indeed, of course, caretakers get a lot of attention and a lot of applause for the great work that they are doing. But keeping the economy going is also something very important. And that is where all of us have our little parts to play in today's low-touch context.